we're going to start our session today on team coaching, and the focus will be building trust in team coaching. And Lynn Harrison is joining us today. I know Lynn for many years. Lynn is an expert in different areas, other than being an executive coach, team coach, coach supervisor, mentor coach, and she has been supporting the team coaching program that we have been running for a few months now. We are in cohort 4. We are starting cohort 5 in May, one program in English and one in Spanish. So I asked Lynn, who teaches the trust part of the program, to come and join us for graduates to get together, keep learning together, and for people who may be interested in team coaching, learn more about what is team coaching and how it works. So Lynn, thank you for accepting the invitation. And you may want to share with people more information about you and your experience.
Oh, thank you. Well, as I was mentioning before, I'm from Vancouver, but I'm presently in Palm Springs. And my interest in this topic goes way back because when I was working with leadership teams, quite often they'd say, you know, our problem is we just don't have trust. And I thought, well, that keeps coming up over and over again. And then I started delving into it. And as I looked more and more at the subject of trust, sometimes it appeared that there are good reasons not to trust at times. And it is a really complex topic, and it's hard to even define. I did a little bit more dabbling in this with my colleague from cohort 7 supervision, Martine Bizarre, because when we were looking at group supervision, we found again that this topic of trust was really important to the success of a supervision group. So we started interviewing people who had been supervisees in groups and just what their experience with trust was. So I'm sharing a little bit of that with you today, as well as what I found doing more general research on the topic of trust. So if it's okay with you, I'll maybe put up my slides, and it's just a small group. So I think we can kind of be pretty informal. And if you want to jump in with questions at any time, please just put up your hand, or Damien, if you notice someone and I'm missing, please call my attention, and I'd be happy to pause at that time. So I'm just going to pop up my slides here. And everybody see that okay? Great, thank you. So as you know, in team coaching, our overall goal is to support the team in achieving its goals. And research has shown that a culture of trust makes a meaningful difference around that. The teams that have high trust tend to be more productive, have higher energy, they're more collaborative, they tend to stay longer, and there's less stress, they're happier, all of which contributes to strong performance. So the work we do as team coaches is really important around this. It's also that much more complex than working one-on-one, where trust and safety are also important, but there are few people to consider. I've been doing team and group coaching for many years now, and I've worked with teams where the trust was really high and others where it was sadly lacking. And I'm sure you've run into this as well. Often we get brought in as team coaches when things have gotten to a bad place. People are no longer talking to each other. Members hide information from one another. They talk behind each other's backs. They compete with each other. And there's a general lack of team spirit. The team is often still producing results, but there's a lot of heavy lifting involved. They don't help each other succeed. And in other words, a lot's being left on the table. So what I'd like to talk about with you today is how we as coaches can help co-create a sense of trust and safety in the team, and how we can support a team where trust has broken down. So I thought I'd just start with talking a little bit about what trust is, because it's a bit of an elusive and multifaceted concept. And basically, it's a feeling that we have. It's not easy to define, but most of us know when it's not present. Fear arises in us, and we seek to protect ourselves, thinking the worst about the situation or the worst about the people involved. And for some, a lack of trust triggers a fight response where they get aggressive and fend off potential attackers. And for others, it's a flight or freeze kind of thing. They shut down and they seek to withdraw. We also know that trust is usually easier when the situation's familiar to us, or we know the people involved and our experience with them is that they're not going to do us harm, that they'll support us. What neuroscience has also shown us through researchers like Paul Zak is that we're more likely to trust when the brain chemical oxytocin is present. Oxytocin increases our empathy, our ability to work together. It also reduces our fear of trusting a stranger. High stress, however, can inhibit oxytocin, and that can cause us to pull away from others and cause us not to interact very effectively. Trust is basically a relational concept, and therefore it's an important measure of the quality of relationships between people. So when the relationships are strong, people give others the benefit of the doubt, they're willing to help them succeed, and they're unafraid to speak their minds without fear of negative repercussions. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, trust is an assessment of risk. It only really comes into question when outcomes are uncertain. And it's a decision we make about whether or not it's safe to trust or not. I wanted to share a little bit, just a bit more background on trust. This is from Robert Hurley, who looked at the decision to trust, and he broke it into 10 factors that contribute to the decision to trust. 3 of them relate to the actual decision maker. And so whether or not the person who's giving trust is willing to give it to the trustee. So the first 3 items that he came up with were around, first of all, how risk tolerant is the person, the trustor? And some people are, as you've probably found, innately more natural risk takers, and other people are more cautious. And, some people don't trust others very easily, and they don't even trust themselves. Now, this can be part of their cultural background or maybe their family of origin. You may be familiar with Hofstede's research, looking at countries that have high uncertainty avoidance and others that don't. The countries with low uncertainty avoidance, people are more comfortable with ambiguity and more likely to trust. So there's people who come to our team sessions that already have this inner proclivity to trust or not trust. And we don't necessarily know who those individuals are in the team. The second factor that Hurley found is that people who are poorly adjusted tend to see many threats in the world. So life has taught these people to be on high alert and be suspicious, and whereas well-adjusted people tend to be more confident that all is going to be well. Again, sometimes when we're working with a team, we don't know who within the team has perhaps been traumatized in the past. Sometimes there can be collective trauma. Employees, for example, who've experienced layoffs or restructuring or poor management practices in the past, and they're coming into the team session with stuff that they've been carrying for some time. And for those of you who, take a systems lens like I do, it's important to notice that what is not owned by individuals in the team that energy gets picked up in the group. That lack of trust can often get picked up by the system. The third thing that Hurley found around decision-making factors was the relative power. So if I don't feel like I have a lot of authority in the situation, I'm going to feel more vulnerable and less comfortable trusting those with power. So again, when we're working with teams and there can be hierarchy within the team, that can be problematic. So especially, a leader that tends to be very dominant. For example, in the session, I may be reluctant to put out what I'm really thinking or even correcting what the boss has said. We used to call it a CLM in the work I was doing, a career limiting move, to open up and maybe oppose the perspective of somebody with more power in the group. The other things that Hurley looked at was, okay, situational factors, and these included things like how secure do the parties feel. So the higher the stakes, the less likely people are to trust. So if I'm thinking what's the worst that can happen and it's not a scary answer, I'm more likely to trust. The problem is around this thing of feeling secure is a lot of work groups, members of work groups don't feel that secure in their employment today. So again, that's something for us as coaches to be aware of that can be going on in the background or under the surface. Hurley also found that people at heart are quite tribal, so they tend to trust people who appear more similar to them, who have common values, part of the same social group, have similar traits like extroversion or ambition. And in a team, I'm sure you found this, there can be sub-teams of people who kind of band together and back each other because they have similar interests or they see themselves as similar. And, you know, for example, one team I worked with recently, there was a difference around values in work-life balance. And the leader had good intentions about, you know, taking the team off to do some work together, but it conflicted with one of the team members' family plans. And the leader thought, well, the team thing is more important. We can't do this without all the team members present. And that clashed with the value system of one of the team members who wanted to put their family commitments first. The other thing that Hurley found was that before trusting, people will consider how likely the other person is to serve their interests. So misaligned interests tend to lead to suspicion, and there's distrust, particularly when there's opaque decision-making, or it appears to serve certain people's interests, but not the group's interests. And then the other factor was whether or not people believed there was benevolent concern for them. For example, trust will be low in a team where it appears that the boss is mostly interested in his or her own interests and being seen as successful. Capability is another factor. I may think your intentions are good, but if I don't trust you to deliver competently, then I'm not going to entrust you with certain things as a member of my team. And then finally, tied on to that is, are you reliable? Like, what's your track record like? Have you come through before? And this is probably most important. Do the parties have good communication? Because trust is a relational concept, communication is critical, and we need to have open and honest communication to support the decision to trust, whereas poor or no communication causes suspicion. As we'll discover later or discuss later, one of the things I found is that often we assume that because the team is perhaps made up of people who've been in the workplace a long time, who are even senior leaders, they're going to have good communication, but not necessarily when it comes to discussing sensitive topics or when the team encounters conflict. Sometimes when people get triggered, all their good listening skills and ability to inquire about others' perspectives goes out the window, and that's when they really need us as coaches. There's a question up here, who can see this transcript? I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
I think that there is a function where people can read the transcript, but everybody has to do it by their own, in their own system, so that was related to it, I think.
Oh, okay, thank you. So just to carry on here, many of you have seen this model, I think, of Lencioni's. I don't know how research-backed it is, but it really kind of fits with my experience, certainly as a team coach. You know, when we don't have, starting at the bottom of the triangle, when we don't have trust, then there is a reluctance to engage in conflict rather than exchanging different points of view and challenging each other's thinking to come up with optimal solutions. The team will hold back. And then you make decisions that don't have real backing or commitment to them because we haven't explored all the different perspectives. And so with a lack of commitment, there's avoidance of accountability, and no one's calling out the lack of follow through, and results begin to suffer. So this is an example of how low trust can end up causing the team to not deliver on its results or not do so optimally. This is also, I think, what I've found is that often when I've gone in to work with the team, I've just felt this heavy energy. And on the surface, there are certain things that are pretty obvious, like either low productivity on the team's part, or even fighting or people shutting down. And I can see all that. But the thing that is challenging about this kind of work is often the people aren't actually talking about all the different things that have contributed to getting them to the place that they're at. And it can take a lot of effort and patience to eventually kind of surface what's actually happening below the waterline that's not so obvious on the surface when working with the team. And so we need to help create this container that is safe for people to actually explore these kind of issues. And some of them are really long-standing. So my question for you is, what do you find is most essential to co-create? And I chose co-create because we can't just do it ourselves as the coach, but to co-create a container of safety in team coaching. What's your go-to thing that you want to make sure is present? And I'd love to hear from anybody about what it is that you like to focus on.
Well, as Damien knows, I'm always willing to add to the discussion. I hate silence.
Thank you.
And I'm so supportive of presenters that I know what it's like. For me, the three things that come to my mind when I'm engaging in team coaching is, number one, rules of engagement. What are the rules that we need to be contracted and how we're going to work together? Then I look at a mission statement. What is the mission that we are aligned towards accomplishing? And then a vision statement as a result of that mission statement. So the mission statement's more aligned with what the objective is relative to the corporate goals. The vision statement is for the team going forward as a means to benchmark. Typically, I will meet with all team members individually, and do a lot of prep work there so that I can address their and anticipate their needs and know even where to sit them around the table so they don't feel uncomfortable, that sort of thing. So a lot of preparation, a lot of contracting. Saves a lot of trouble. Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say, these aren't the kind of sessions we want to walk into blind. And sometimes, you know, I've learned by mistake, because even something like you said, people who sit together, you know, the three that are part of kind of the sub team that, you know, tend to band together will sit together because they're used to being with each other, right? Or you'll walk in and the room is set up in a way that's really not conducive to people communicating around the table. Thank you. That's great. Who else has something they'd like to share?
I can add something to what Michael was sharing. but maybe context might be important. I actually specialize in two kinds of team coaching. One, when there is a conflict in a team. And the second one is after some kind of mergers or acquisitions. Yeah, I work with one bigger organization that usually buys a smaller startup. And I help the startup or teams which are developed later through the combination of the, let's say, old and new people to start being an effective team eventually. So I would say that I don't have any expectations about trust at the beginning in terms of what's going on in the team. Yeah. So for me, trust is something which I aspire to achieve with the team throughout the team coaching process. So I do all of the interviews. I'm very meticulous about contracting. I notice that sometimes, especially in the context of conflict, overdoing assessments before we start even work, it's not really helpful. So I try to limit those. And what is the most important for me is thinking about how I can make sure that the team feels that me and my co-coach, we are on the site as a team. Because it's so easy to get into the perspective that, like if I think about trust between them and coaches, yeah, it's so easy to get stuck into the perspective like, okay, you are given to us by the organization, or you are prescribed somehow. So as well, I don't have a lot of expectations at the beginning. I'm okay with the lower level of engagement. Yeah, that's why I believe that I need to be comfortable with silence. And I animate a little bit at the beginning. I have one of my favorite exercises, which is called the history of the team. When I meet the team face to face, we actually do it in a space. Yeah, they create something, especially when the team is built through the merger. So they see that this is a combination, that the team is the sum of the history. So I invite them to maybe engage and to talk, but by not pressing, I'm actually allowing to things unfold. And my goal is usually, let's say, if I have an engagement for 3 to 6 months, my goal would be to get something out of the team in midway, like to feel that we are getting there in terms of trust somehow. And I see that how they react to themselves. So contracting is really important at the beginning, as I said, about confidentiality, but this way, how we communicate here in the space of coaching. And I feel that this is the role of coaches at the beginning, guide this contract a little bit, and then invite team members to guide the contract as well.
Yes.
So that's my perspective. Yes, so I would love to have a team that there is a trust and we just work on effectiveness or higher innovation or finalizing some process or something. But most of the time I work with the teams when trust is minimal or was broken.
Yes. Yeah. And I love your idea about honoring what's gone on before. One of the things I've used with teams is where we do a timeline and have people who were present at different points stand up and talk about what was it like back in 1992 when we were all sitting on boxes and we didn't have proper offices yet, and all the way through, so that story is shared with the people who weren't there at that time and is honored even if the new culture is starting to evolve. I was also curious, Inga, when you said, I don't like to overdo the assessment part. Did you want to just speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I notice currently the pressure or the marketing pressure that there are a lot of team assessments introduced for team coaches to use in the discovery phase. I don't want to quote any because I don't want to do any dark or positive marketing to something. I use some of them myself, but I noticed that they don't help so much. Like if we do a very elaborate assessment, yes, we can have a fancy report at the end, but does it really contribute to building higher self-awareness of the team? Sometimes it is much helpful to do it in a second part of engagement, to do it at the end, or just to have something really simple at the beginning, like interviewing with the basic questions, not to go through all of these elements. Yeah, like kind of relationships do you build? How do you manage stakeholders? What are the communication like? What is the leadership like? And so on, so on. They just especially when I know that something is going on, how reliable the results are going to be for me. I don't know, maybe people will share what we want to hear, or people will share they I don't know, anger a little bit in this assessment. So that's my perspective. Yeah, I know that we are encouraged as team coaches to use those to understand, to build the self-awareness of the team. And normally I would say yes, self-awareness contributes to higher trust, because we, for example, get to understand each other a little bit more. But in this context I work, it sometimes it is an obstacle. It doesn't help me as a coach to get from distrust to trust.
Great, thank you. And I think, like Michael was saying as well, I would put interviews before using a survey tool, because that's an opportunity for us as the coach to start to build trust and relationship with the team members. Anybody else like to speak to this question? What do you find most essential to create a container of safety? Okay, well, let's move on. I have a few things I've.
Lynn, one thing I want to be sure everybody cover, but something else that I think is interesting is how the team coach build trust with the team as another component. Like when you asked that question, I went immediately, as Michael answered, you know, Michael, I was well aligned. I was thinking exactly what you shared about ground rules and having a clear vision where you're going. And then how does the team coach build trust with the team as something else to consider? So in part is by being sure that this is clear, you also create that container of safety when you're working together during the team coaching process. So I want to bring this to people's awareness about thinking not only just to evaluate and look about what's going on with trust as a key element of the work of the team coach, but also how the team coach is intentionally building the trust as something for us to reflect on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for underlining that. And one of the things that I like to remember is that as soon as I make contact with the team, I'm starting to impact it. From the very first conversation, I'm starting to touch the system, and being aware of the impact that we can be having as the person who's being brought in to support the team. Michael, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, this just building on what Damian was saying too. This I made the same mistake actually when I started today. Obviously, we need to say what coaching is and isn't, and what our role is as team coaches. So, what are expectations for the team, and what are the expectations for me? And do they look at me as a proxy for management, or so I need to establish my role and responsibility as much as they're establishing their vision and role and responsibilities for themselves. So that's very key too. So in those one-on-one discussions, I do talk about what coaching is and isn't, and how team coaching works in a way that can inspire them to maximize their own personal professional potential within the team and for themselves.
Yeah, fantastic.
And to know that I'm there to support them.
Yes.
And so it's not just the team, it's each one, and to make sure that I follow through on that, of course.
Yeah, I think that point is really important too, because I was just saying to Damien before we started today that often when I am brought in to work with the team, it is because I've worked with an executive leader who's developed trust with me and then says, oh, I need you to come and work with my team. So I'm already coming in with that affiliation with the leader. And so communicating that I'm there for the team, not just for the leader, is important from the very get-go to build trust with the team. I also think sorry?
And just to further that, I have had those tough conversations with senior management saying, look, I am going to bring you into these team dynamics. I'm asking you to support, to listen and to support, not to criticize. You can tell me afterwards what's going on, but that's not the time to do it. this is your time to show up in terms of support and to be as participative and as vulnerable as they are in terms of willing to collaborate. And oftentimes they just say, I won't bother showing up. You just run the show, which of course also is a signal to me as to how much support they're actually going to get after I leave. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I think, so often when I've gone to work with teams, part of the problem has been the team leader. And then so helping the team leader prep for how they show up in the sessions is part of this. I was just going to speak to that actually as one of the key ingredients that I was going to share today. But sometimes leaders will say to me, well, I don't want to dominate. And then they almost go to the other end of the spectrum and they don't say a word during the session. And there are times where they need to be participating as much as the rest of the members. So I thought what I do is just move into this next piece, which is around contracting that you've been speaking about. And for me, contracting is as much ensuring that people understand what coaching is, team coaching is, and that they're actually ready to do it. So very often people don't know what team coaching is. They're expecting team training or team strategic planning, related concepts, but not the same thing as coaching a team to be more effective in its work together. And even though sometimes there are teachable moments that get incorporated into team coaching, it is a different thing and they aren't necessarily expecting that, or they think they're going to do a wonderful 2-day offsite in a great location and that's going to be the team coaching, not something that is ongoing and has some goals attached to it and so on. So the first step is to assess whether or not the team is actually wanting and ready to commit to coaching. And we need to contract not only with the team, but with the team and its leader, or not only with the sponsor rather, but the team and its leader, and start to build the trust from the get-go. If we're working with another coach, we also need to contract with that person. Two coaches working together that are not really well aligned can be more of a problem than a help to a team sometimes. The other thing is just making sure there's clarity about, how long is this going to be going on for, who's going to be involved. Sometimes it's not even clear who's actually on the team and who's not. So sorting out all that kind of stuff at the beginning is super important. Then the next thing for building the trust, I put it taking a baseline assessment, and I agree with what you were saying, Inga, about we can get carried away with fancy surveys, and often it's more important to have good interviews with people where they feel safe and willing to open up, start to get underneath the waterline, some of that stuff that's going on that people aren't talking about. It's also really important to ensure that there's clarity about how the information is used, who can see it, the anonymity of information, and so on. A quick way to lose trust is to break down some of those agreements at the beginning, especially with teams where there's low trust. They're afraid to say anything that nears the truth if they have experienced betrayal in the past. I usually, if I do a survey, I have one that I've developed with my partner that we've used over the years. It's not a really fancy one, but it works very well. And we actually present the raw data to the team and let the team interpret it. So they can see if, one person thinks we're doing really well on this dimension and somebody else put a score at the opposite end, or they're all grouped in the same place, so they're seeing things similarly or not. That opens a lot of really rich dialogue to get things started in the work we do together. I also contract up front whether the team leader will get to see any kind of data summary in advance of the session. or whether or not anybody like a sponsor can see any of that. It's again really important to have clarity about all that. Sometimes I've done surveying or interviews with people outside the actual team who are impacted by the team, because the way the team is seeing itself and how effective it is can be different from the stakeholders who they are there to serve. The next point here is around, we've talked a little bit about this, but working agreements and the importance of having a designed alliance at the start that not only attends to what will potentially happen in the session with the team coach, but on an ongoing basis within the team, how it would like to function when the coach isn't there, and the kind of atmosphere that they are seeking to create with one another. As part of this, it should be included, how does the team want to deal with conflict if or perhaps when it arises? The designed alliance not only helps surface what people fear might happen in the coaching relationship, but it also identifies the qualities that are important to them, like having fun, leveling the playing field, and so on. So it doesn't just have to be, you know, attending to all the things that could go wrong. I think Michael spoke to this, you know, talking about the vision for the team or the mission for the team. We're serving the team so that it can achieve the goals that it has set out to achieve, or the organization is looking to achieve. But these will be some goals that they identify that may come out of the data collection around not what the team is working on, but how they work together, which can be as important to define as the task goals that they set out for themselves. With some teams I've worked with, we've actually developed like a team dashboard so they can hold themselves accountable to those intentions they have for how they work together, and assess individually and collectively how they think they're progressing in terms of the things they're trying to work on as a team. So number 5 is developing greater understanding of self and others. As when I was talking about Hurley's findings, one of the things that really contributes to trust evolving in a group is their sense of safety with one another, because they see similarities or they understand themselves and others. And there's a variety of different things we can use to support this. One of the things I like to do, you know, with a team, and again, it depends on where the team is at, but self-revealing exercises can be really powerful, like Lifeline. These are the 3 key events that have shaped me. My backstory, this is, you know, kind of who I am. This is my Achilles heel. The more people can start to be vulnerable with one another, they can build greater understanding with each other. A brown bag exercise where they just bring something from home and they pull out of their brown bag. These are the 3 things that I picked to share with you that I think tell you something about me. Sometimes when I've done team sessions and it's been out in nature, we've actually used nature as part of what we share with one another, what they found in nature or drawing on elements of nature. This isn't really, this kind of maybe falls a little bit into team building as opposed to just team coaching, but even spending time out in nature, doing something challenging together can really help build the closeness of the team. I had one team where we went out in a dugout canoe and we practiced doing all different kinds of strokes together, and some were in unison and some were not. And just the physicality of what that was like to move in the same direction versus kind of working against each other was really powerful in reinforcing the concept of team. Intersectionality exercises are great for people to get to know who people are beyond just what school they went to and what education or what career channels they followed, as well as sometimes, and again, I think using this judiciously, but some of the different psychometric tools can be helpful just to get to understand oneself and similarities and differences with others. I use the leadership circle quite a lot in working with leaders, and often when leaders come together and they share what their 360 feedback has been and what they're working on, that can help, again, break down barriers between people and allow them to support each other more as members of the team, as can values exercises and understanding what's similar or different about what people value. Would anybody like to add anything here? I know there's lots of experience in the group here. What you do around this side of things, helping people get to know each other better? Do you have a favorite go-to exercise that you use?
I like one where it's a lifeline. So I use that line to represent things. For example, represent 2 or 3 events that were important in your life. And I use that sometimes, for example, share your stories and you join this team from the date to today. And in that line represent the time that you started the team and where you are now. So and 2 special events for you. So as a way to identify things, or you can start the line anywhere you want. And I have used this for many different things. Like you can be creative in how you use this lifeline. That's something that I like to do.
I've had some teams where they're like super creative with, they put pictures that they've brought from home and pasted it on the flip chart paper and all this kind of stuff. And then I've worked with groups that are engineers and they've actually, done a spreadsheet kind of thing, and they brought that, and it's looking super professional, what you might expect from someone with an engineering background. So it's quite fun.
When you see that, that reminded me when I was at ICF in the board of directors. One of the activities we did was we have a line since the organization was created to today, and people had to go and stand up and write based on who started being engaged with the organization first. They will go and they will write their name and the year and share something about that. Cool. Inga.
Yeah, I love all of these exercises. I actually miss being in a space with teams right now, because since the last 3 years, I do everything like virtually, and like silently putting yourself in a line and finding who was the first come, and who is the newest part of the member as well. So it gave some kind of dynamic. Sometimes I like doing some kind of exercise, and it's done well virtually and in face, which is called like a network, social network of this team. So first I invite people to either draw something, like they picture. Let's imagine that you have to put this picture either on like Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, where it depends on the kind of organization I work with, what social network I'm choosing. And then I will like create the board. And I said, okay, this is the stage of your team. I would like you to position these pictures somehow in a meaningful way for yourself. And people organize these pictures somehow. So we can see that people who closer together, they have pictures closer to each other. The people like leader always thinks like, sometimes this is interesting when the leader puts their picture. I had a really huge session just around this, because leader wanted to be among the people, and people said you are in the center. So and there was a really interesting discussion around it. But when the pictures are finally there, I invite people to use different markers and find the connections between them. Like connections might be very different. Like I worked with this person on the project last year, or we delivered this macro together, or for example, we commute together to work, or our kids go to the same, like they look for different kind of connections. And we see after how it is created, it's almost like genogram of the family. They can see that there are some kind of patterns visible here. And then we can look at it. I take pictures of it, and we think about okay, so what is possible in a team like this? Or what are the strengths of the team like this? I like to start with the strength-based approach. Yeah.
Yes.
What is the value of the team like this? Yeah. How this team can contribute? What this team can do to go to the next level of effectiveness, for example, or whatever goal they have right now. And then we can explore, okay, so what possible obstacles can we see here? So this kind of exercise, it starts a little bit like a team building. However, then you run it in the team coaching manner, yeah, with a lot of questions and insights and evoking awareness, and as well facilitating growth, because it leads really easily to some kind of idea of the experiment. What can we do? You can even, if you are up into constellations, you can even invite people to change something there. Like, okay, if we know that this is an obstacle, what small change can we do in this picture? So to be honest, I used to do it a lot offline, but I noticed that when you do it online, especially on like whatever board is available, what you use, I like using Miro for that. You can do a lot of the teeny tiny adjustments. So it's actually kind of technology is helpful here, yeah, that we can change a lot of things as well. So this is one of my favorite, apart from the history of the team, which is as well spread in the line somehow, which shows me a lot of already power dynamics or some kind of assumptions or belief team has.
Yeah, thank you. I love to use constellations as well. And I've even taken the concept of trust and had people think about, who do I feel most trusting of in the team? Who do I feel closest to, and who have I not yet developed that level of connection with? And it starts to get deeper. But we kind of, as you know, need to meet teams where they are and then take them deeper and deeper. But a great place to start is just with people getting more self-aware of who they are in the team and how they're similar or different from other people. Just a couple more here. One of the things that we talked about earlier in Hurley's research is that we need to have good communication to have trust. Well, sorry, Danny, did you have a comment you wanted to make? I missed that.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I just want to add to what Inga mentioned. What I did, actually, I just want to share with the team. I just asked the team member to point. One is what you call it, the strength or the positive things about the other persons. So then bringing the positives to the team, really boosting the trust to each other.
Totally. Yeah. I love that, like an acknowledgement exercise of what we appreciate about what the different members of the team bring. It often ends up with tears. People are so touched by that. Yeah. Thank you.
So Lynn, we have 5 minutes to wrap up. So I want to be sure if there are any questions before we finish.
Okay, just a couple more slides here. As I was saying, another important piece is making sure that the team has the tools for healthy communication. So we're not just assuming that they can talk to the elephants in the room. So I sometimes will introduce the awareness wheel or the cycle of the promise, or other communication, little teachable moments that support the team being able, especially when they're triggered, to have a difficult conversation. And then finally, the last thing is just working with what shows up. And this is where I think our experience and our own self-trust as team coaches really comes to bear. Are we able to stay secure in the moment when stuff is happening all around us and it gets messy? So when a team is really anxious, it's easy to get pulled into that energy and to even lose our way. I find having a co-coach can be extremely helpful, particularly if stuff that's happening is triggering for me, potentially. Even as coaches, we can have our own shame triggered with things, or some of the frustration in the team can get directed toward us as coaches. And that can be really difficult to give the team what it needs in that moment and to be able to really self-manage. So basically slowing things down, sometimes it helps to refer to the team alliance, making sure that we model good communication and that we encourage the parties to slow down as well and really listen and take turns and reach understanding. Sometimes it's good just to take a break and get out of the room for a few minutes to calm things down, and then not to leave things hanging. I mean, as a supervisor, one of the things I find is brought more often than not to supervision is, what do I do when, you know, the poop hits the fan, somebody drops a bomb, and I'm just stunned in the moment and I can't think of what to do or say. And that's when the team really needs us to be able to stay calm and help them work through and not have our own stuff triggered by all of that. So that was basically what I wanted to share today. The last slide just really relates to that ability to draw on our self-trust. So I think for us as team coaches, we're always works in progress to do this kind of work.
There was a question from Katia. She wrote it to me in Spanish about the relationship between trust and psychological safety.
Well, I see psychological safety as being the ability to ask questions or to confront people with authority without fear of repercussion. And when there's an environment of trust, then I don't have fear about that. And we're able to then grow together because that kind of stuff is not kept off the table. So they're different, but I think they're very related. I don't know if that answers the question.
My question was, and I heard it somewhere, that to have psychological safety, there must be trust.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't have psychological safety if you don't have trust.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking of a team particularly I worked with,
Mm-hmm.
where there was going to be a restructuring and they're going to be a huge layoff. So there was, we had to build the psychological safety, and I'm just trying to work out what comes first, or they're both like work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially when you, as you said, sometimes you have reasons not to trust.
Mm-hmm. And some individuals will trust more readily than others, right? So they can be facing the same circumstances, but for one person, they're more willing to take the risk of trusting than another. As leaders, creating psychological safety is not only articulating that it's safe to push back or to speak your truth, but actually acting in ways that are consistent with that. Sometimes that's said, but it still doesn't feel safe for people.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there's, you know, we've talked a little bit about the history of teams. Sometimes there's been things that have happened in the past, even before the members of the team even join the team, but it's still very much a ghost that's present around, it isn't safe to speak your mind here. That can take a long time and a lot of consistent behavior on the part of leaders to try to shift that. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Lynn. Very, very helpful.
Anybody else want to add anything or ask any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. That was great. Thank you for your session today. We are going to be sharing that later. Usually share this in my newsletter and also in YouTube, in my channel. You will be able to find this recording if you want to go back, because I think we're very rich Lynn, was a lot of information. And also take the opportunity to invite everyone to our next program. Most of you are graduates from the program, but if you know anybody who may be interested, we're starting the program, a new team coaching certification in May, one in English and one in Spanish. So the Spanish is on Mondays and the English is on Tuesday mornings. It's 4 hours every other week for 8 sessions each. And we cover the 8 core competencies from team coaching from the ICF. And this is one of them, trust, building trust. And so we're going to keep working on that. So Lynn, thanks again. Thanks everybody. For people who are also here, we have several supervisors too. We have next week, Inga is going to be doing a demonstration. So you're going to come to see Inga in action. Come to join us. It's an open session for the program. Let me be sure that I am talking about the right program. It's Tuesday, 4 p.m., correct? Because I got like three programs in
Tuesday,
my head.
4 p.m., 28th.
Yeah, Tuesday, 4 p.m. if you want to join us. And it's in my Zoom ID. I'm going to write it down here for everybody if you want to join us to see this session.
4 p.m. What time zone?
Pacific Standard Time.
Okay.
And this is my Zoom ID that I put in the chat room. So if you want to you don't need to register, you just show up. Hope you can make it. And also the same day after Inga, we have a session with Asian Supervisors Network. And Danny, I sent you a message. I don't know if you got to see in the chat room. I sent you a message.
Yeah, I get it. I love to.
Okay, great. Yes. Great. So in the Asian Supervisors Network, it's going to be 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to be a little bit late, Michael, for you in Canada, in the East Coast, but it's 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's going to be on the Cinefin. And the colleague for Japan, Andrew, and Genevieve from Paris, she's going to be in the middle of the night for her, going to join us. And it's going to be a fun session. They have done that last year. It was really interesting.
Oh, this is a great session, honestly. I saw them twice already, and I will definitely want to join. This is a great session.
It's a really interesting stuff. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon, okay? Take care.